And God's grace and His mercy and His peace are yours in Jesus Christ our Savior. And there's a way for you to take notes if you wish to do that. Of course, they'll be projected up here on the screen for us as we continue our way through Psalm 121, titled this sermon, Help is on the Way. I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where is my help coming from? My help comes from the Lord. And so I wanted to talk about this idea of help. So something happened to Teresa and I. Last week, it was interesting. Jim and I were at a conference together for the first few days of the week, and then I flew into Boise and out of Boise, drove from Boise to Camp Perkins to join our high school students up at Camp Perkins. If any of you have ever been to Camp Perkins, phone service is spotty at best, which is great, actually. I mean, most of the time it's great. But I just so happened, I didn't get service, couldn't get service. And then they had Wi-Fi kind of on and off, so my phone was using Wi-Fi here and there. I wasn't getting messages, and I just happened to walk into the room where I was staying, because I didn't have my phone with me because it wasn't working, and I saw a call come in. And we have a little rental home down in Yuma, Arizona, and my renter called, and the renters are out of the house. They're here at the spud harvest. They're here, their whole family's doing spud harvest. And they said, my father-in-law just drove by your house, and there is water coming out the front door, the garage door, and the back door. I don't know, that God made that connection happen, because immediately then I'm tracking down Signe, the director, and I'm trying to get in the office so I can actually use a real phone and call the Yuma Water Department, shut off the water. And then I call my friends down there. We have a pastor and his wife that are good friends of ours, went to seminary together. Our kids are the same age. We graduated together. And he's the pastor at Christ Lutheran. It's a church and school, much like Grace. So we built this friendship with them, and they said, we're on our way. And off they went. And as I looked and reviewed at this, so by the way, that means as soon as church is done, I'm out of here. I'm driving down to Yuma. So, because I got to meet with the adjuster and the restoration guy and just going to meet with all those guys. And Teresa's very nervous that her colorblind husband will do a lot of bad picking. But I had to stop for a minute. I tell you this because I had a whole different introduction I was going to give you on this. But as I stopped and looked, it's one of those moments where you kind of go, I need some help. And in some of the cases, and when I went through it, I stopped and I said, the camp was great to me. They made phones available for me for the next 3 hours. I tied up their phone line and was just trying on and off to get things done. Our renters were great, called us immediately. I mean, they don't have stuff in the house. They just called us. They've been great. Our high school team was understanding. I was supposed to be involved with stuff, and they let me just kind of do what I needed to do in order to do it. Teresa has been a champ, patient and understanding. She handled a lot of stuff from Pocatello that I would normally do, and she handled that. And then there's Juan, the restoration guy, and Claudia from Service Master, and Darren from Nationwide Insurance, and Pastor Vince Harmon and his wife Tammy, and my pool guy, who went back there and turned off the pump so it wouldn't run without water running through it, and on and on and on. As I reflected on it, how many people stepped up and helped us in that moment. And even along the way, and my family, I'll talk about this in a minute, my family will chuckle about this because even for me, I got to a point where I was like, gosh, I feel like I'm burdening so many people because I have to ask for so much help until I can actually physically be there to do the thing I need to do. I have to ask for so much help. And especially I felt badly of this pastor and his wife down there because I called and I said, Tammy, I need some help. And they dropped whatever they were doing and went and did what they needed to do. It's just really cool. And yet it posed an issue for me because this whole idea of asking for help, I think is something that each of us could reflect on and possibly, I hope, learn something from this scripture, this Psalm of Ascent. I look up, where's my help coming from? Because we struggle with this, and I think independent Americans, struggle with this topic of how do I ask for help? When do I ask for help? What if someone asks me for help? I think it's fraught with some challenges, and there is a godly response to this. because we have a God who is passionate, who in fact, by design, in the incarnation of God in Jesus Christ, was designed to help. That is God's purpose, is to save. Help is on the way, my friends. Help is on the way, and his name is Jesus Christ. So what I'm longing to do today is at least have us reflect, perhaps if you can reflect individually, but how we reflect on our ways of asking for help. How eager are we in asking? How willing are we to ask for help? How do we, in fact, have the privilege of helping others? So there's 4 things I want to share with you on this singular verse. Where does my help come from? How do I ask for help? How do I receive it? So I'll tell you a story about a member that I served when I lived in Seattle. And she was a dear. She served, we worked on lots and lots of things together, and she had her aging mom live with her. Dad had passed away. And so we were co-workers, and so her name was Irma, we'll say. And so I remember one time, I never had been to her house. And one time, very reluctantly, she came in my office and she said, I think I need some help. So her mother was aging and she was now not ambulatory. She couldn't move around. And she said, I need some help at my house. And I said, okay. So I went over to the house, and it was an older home in Seattle, in West Seattle, and several floors and stairs and things like that. And her mom was approaching 90, not able to manage the stairs anymore. And the house was one of those homes, they were hoarders. And so every corner, every surface was absolutely stacked above my head. National Geographics and magazines and boxes of clothing. And I mean, for goodness sakes, they had a brand new box of diapers in there. And she's in her, the lady talking to me is like 60, and her mom is about 90. And I go, what do you have this here for? Oh, well, we wanted to give that to a friend. Well, how long ago was that? Oh, about 5 years ago. I said, I think they're out of diapers by now. And so it was one of those homes, have you ever been in? Where you kind of weave your way through the house. There's a path that you kind of go through. And it was difficult, it was challenging, and I could tell she was so embarrassed. And I said, well, how can we help? Well, Mom, we need to set up a room down here for Mom's bedroom. Because Mom was sleeping on the couch, so she could be on the same level as the bathroom and the kitchen, and so forth. And I said, I'm happy to. Let me get a team together. No. Right? No. And I said, Irma, you want me to do this by myself? But it was one of those moments where this illustrates, and I think in far less extreme ways, hopefully you can relate to this too. The very first point I have is that why do we struggle with help? It shows I'm weak. There are times when it just says I'm not able, I'm weak, I can't do it. We laugh about it in the classroom. You know the only dumb question? I cannot tell you how many people say to me, like in Life in Christ, well, this is a really dumb question. And I always stop people. It's an old cliche. The only dumb question is the one you don't ask, right? Because I guarantee you, especially in church questions, there's 6 other people asking the same question. So anyway, but why don't we ask those questions? Because I should be capable, because it shows that I'm weak. And here's the reality. I remember when this happened too. I had a roommate in college who's dating one of a student, a friend of ours. And he was dating her for a while, and I remember I'm out with him, and she was coming home. She had bought some stuff and had some groceries or things like this. And he's sitting there, and I go, hey, your girlfriend's out there. Why don't you go help her? He says, no, I'm not helping her. She's capable. I go, what are you talking about? Why don't you go give her a hand? And he says, no, she got mad at me when I tried to help. I am woman, hear me roar. I am capable. And it's interesting because I have actually experienced that too, where I want to hold a door, or I'll offer, can I help you? You're unloading something. Can I help you carry something? Even sometimes when a woman is carrying a table here, and this is my line, I will say, if I do not help you, my mother will rise from her grave and punch me in the face. Okay? This is the deal. And I have gotten a mixed set of responses. And it's so interesting because I think people perceive that, and I get it for women too. Are you capable? I don't think you're incapable. I just want to help. I love to help. To be honest, I want to honor you by holding a door, by helping care. It's not because I think you're weak. It's because I want you to be honored and respected. And so my answer to this one is, when we say to God, I'm not going to ask you right away for help, or I'm not going to bother you with this little thing, because it should show that I'm weak if I can't handle this thing. In reality, what Jesus is saying to us is, let me show you how strong I am. Let me show you how capable I am. It's not about your weakness. In this case, it will be later, because to be frank, are we weak? Let's be honest. Yes. And we often fight through our weakness and exacerbate the holes and the gaps and refuse or are reluctant to ask. And Jesus simply says to us, my child, I know you're weak, but I am strong. And so the first thing about help is the acknowledgement that God is strong and he is eager to help. Second thing. People often will say too, why don't we help? Oh, it's a bother and I'm taking advantage of you. That's why we won't help. Why we won't ask for help. It's a bother. You know, it's interesting. My family struggles this with me. I think they're sometimes appalled by me because I am shameless in asking for help. I'm just shameless. I'm like, hey, can you give me a ride down to the tire store? You know, hey, can you help me unload this house? Hey, can you help build a high school? How about that? Come on. You know, hey, let's do a retaining wall, or let's move this new family in, or we need to gather clothing to help outfit people, or someone's having a new baby. I'm just shameless. I don't care. If you say no to me, I'm okay with that. I don't go around, well, they said no to me and these people are jerks. I don't do that. I just go, I think God has provided for this, and so I'm going to ask the next person. I learned this, by the way, at being a development guy. When I asked for money all the time, I had a wise head say to me, sometimes it takes 10 asks to get one yes. So every no you get gets you closer to the yes. And so I said, oh, okay, I can live with that. I can live with that. So I'm shameless in asking, because in reality, asking the one who has been built to help. Do you get this theological point? Jesus Christ, the incarnate God, God made flesh, was made to help. That is his design and purpose. It's not as if you're asking a hammer to do a screwdriver's work. You're asking what God has been made and purposed to do the very thing which he was made and designed to do. And so it is no bother. It's the same way that I say, Jim and I have often said this to people. People will say, Pastor, you're so busy. And let me apologize on both our parts. Forgive me, I didn't ask your permission on this. If we come off as too busy, if we seem distracted or, if we're not, please forgive us. Because we are longing for you to say, Pastor, could you visit us? Pastor, could you come and pray with us? Pastor, we'd like to talk this through with you. It's why we're made. It's the call which God has given to us, which we are answering. And so I often say to people, and if I ever say this in a snarky way, please forgive me again. I need lots of forgiveness. But I will say, don't say no for me. You get what I'm saying? If you don't ask, you have said no for me without ever asking. So let me say no, because I'm interested in a show of hands. Who have we said no to? When you have asked, it is our design to say yes. Now think about it this way. Don't say no for Jesus, because he is designed to say yes. In your baptism, God said yes to you. In the promises of his word, he has said yes to you. In the words of forgiveness and absolution, God has said yes to you. When you kneel at this altar and he comes to you in his very body and blood, Jesus Christ has said yes to your cry for mercy and for aid and help. He has said yes. He is made to do so. Don't say no for Jesus. Third thing, when we ask for help, why do we struggle? Here's one that I find interesting. When I talked to Irma about her house, in the hoarder's house and so forth, when I wanted to bring people in, I said, Irma, I know some people who are really good at this, and they could design it, and they could make something simple. It wouldn't cost that much. I said, we'll have to do some cleaning out and make some space, that kind of thing. And you know what she said? No. She said, no. You know why? Because they won't do it the way I want it done. How about that? Is that a reason why you don't ask for help? Because if I ask for help, they may not do it the way I want it. Thank God that God won't do it the way you want it. Are you with me? Because the way we want it hasn't been working out so well. In our human nature, in our broken nature, our tendency is to do those things which sometimes continue to perpetuate the issue, and how critical and how wonderful it is that we have someone to call on who will say to us, I am longing to help, I was made to help, I was designed to help, it is my passion to help, but get ready to change. Because that's also my purpose. Is Jesus' purpose is in the process of changing lives. And so sometimes the timing is not what we want. Sometimes the style is not what we want. Sometimes the honesty or transparency is a little bit not what we want. And yet we have a Savior out of God's overwhelming mercy and love. Jesus Christ was sent to die for you. Jesus Christ was sent for you. So thank God that he won't do it the way we want, because the old way needed fixing. And when God does things, things change. And we rejoice in that. If you think you can come to this altar, receive Christ in his body and blood, and not be changed, think again. If you are coming in faith to receive what Christ himself is giving, what we are saying at this altar as we kneel is to say, Lord, my way was not working. And what you offer me in mercy and grace will transform my life. I do not know exactly how that will look, but I know that you are a God of love and mercy, and that you have my best interests in heart. You didn't think you were saying all that stuff when you came up here, did you? And so, Lord, change me, feed me, grace me, gift me, so that I might be changed. Last point. So, you know, when we were in seminary, I forget, Teresa, you could remind me, I think we moved 10 times in 4 years. Something like that, 10 or 12 times in 4 years. And many of us have gone through years like that in our life. Often it's when we're younger and have energy. Now I'm like, the thought of moving just is terrifying. But we moved a lot. And so seminary students help each other. And so we would get asked all the time, hey, you'd see a U-Haul come, and sometimes there were 6 or 7 U-Hauls all at the same time. People leaving for vicarage, people leaving in the middle of the year to go to a December church, or getting a call and doing those things. And in our apartment complex, we had, a dozen apartments or so in this, and we helped each other out. And I had a guy living upstairs, and he said, hey, could you help me move? And so we have helped people move so many times. I have a rule. You must be packed. I'm not packing your boxes for you. And I remember the truck was there. It was the time we went up there, and we went up there, and they were not packed. And I was hacked off because he was desperate. And so what he had was a big cooler of beer sitting at the front. And I said, that's not going to do it for me. But I said, I'll be back when you're packed. I say this to you, that may make sense to all of us. It's not how God works. Thank God that's not how God works. That he doesn't put that qualifier on it. I'll come to help you when you've got your boxes packed. I'll come to help you when you have your act together. That was my rule. and it was not a Christ-like rule. It might be a smart rule, but it's not a Christ-like rule. And so it's interesting because the fourth point that I have here is that it might expose things that I don't want others to know. Reason that we sometimes may not want to help, or that we don't ask for help, is this might expose some stuff. So Teresa and I are headed out to Portland next weekend. The church we served in Aloha, Oregon, Bethlehem, is celebrating its 60th anniversary, and they've asked me to come back and preach and to be part of that celebration. I'm really excited to do this. Where our kids grew up, really. Sarah was confirmed there, and so we have dear, dear friends there. We were there for a decade. And it's interesting because we're excited about that. And it's funny, every time I go back to Portland, I don't miss Portland much, but boy, I miss people. I miss those friends and relationships that we built. And so it's neat to retain those connections. And there's one guy, I'm going to tell you a story about one guy. I'm going to change his name. But Bill was a great friend. He was a guy, if I called, he helped at any moment. Hanging sheetrock, moving people in, gathering food, doing whatever he needed. If we did a service project, he was first in line. Went down to Mexico, built houses. He was happy, he was helpful, he was the life of the party. And one day Bill came to me and he said, "Jonathan, I'm struggling with alcohol." He says, "I've denied it for years. I'm an alcoholic. And I cannot fix this myself anymore." He was a social drinker. He could drink a lot. You'd never know. He was careful. He paid attention. Why? Because this was the hardest thing he said when he came to me. He says, "I don't know how to get help because it's going to expose some things I don't want people to know." Now, I don't know about each of you. It may not be an extreme example like that. For some of us it is. But for others, it might be other things. There might be activities I do when I'm alone. I don't want people to know. It might be the way I spend my money or my time. People might stand in judgment over me. And so we don't ask for help. Let me tell you first, very practically, there is probably nothing you could ever say to Pastor Von Bush or to me that we have not already heard, nor that we have prayed through and loved and walked beside people on. There's almost certainly nothing you can tell us, because we've dealt with everything from people who have been incarcerated for assault and murder and burglary and rape. We have worked with people who struggle with addictions, so there's nothing you can tell us. But until you tell us, we don't know how to help. But let me say this to you. God knows already. And so the one who matters most has already full knowledge of everything that you are ever trying to hide, and therefore reluctant to ask for help. And thankfully, God has built his church, and out of the priesthood of believers, he has called individuals who have been called to also help. And that's why we exist. That is why we're here. The church is not here as a country club. The church is not here to have cool programs. The church is not here even to run a school. The church is here in order to bring Christ's help, his saving presence, and therefore we do school and worship. We do all these things. And so God, who knows all things, has loved us already. He isn't waiting for you to have all your boxes packed. He isn't waiting for you to have all your ducks in a row. Good luck with that. Tell me when you got that in order for him to intervene and help. And so I'm thankful for Bill, and I'm looking forward to seeing Bill, because Bill has sought God's help and received it. And God longs to bring that help. It's how strong he is. It's how he was made. It's his purpose and his passion. We are in need of what he offers to help. And in spite of knowing all things about every one of us, God has loved us and continues to remain with us. That's the help we need, and that help is always on the way. To God be the glory. Amen.